was just eating out of the vacuum cleaner. Like, what did I know?
Oh my God.
Where's Matthew? He's been quiet for a while. Hi. So Zara, who the hell are you?
Oh.
That's right. The hard-hitting journalism here, right?
Such a complex question. Yes, I have many identities, I feel like. But
what's your favorite identity right now?
Oh, my favorite identity is like amateur race car driver. 100%. Yeah.
All right.
I love taking a car to a racetrack. But I think I'd probably hate it if it were at my actual job, just given how much data is collected about you and how the emphasis is on coaching and improvement. And I like the coaching and improvement, but if it were your job, it would feel different. So,
yeah, right.
But that's a good one. I like that one. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids who are teenagers, which is interesting. I'm a cancer survivor, and then I work in design. A wife. I've done pretty good at being a wife, actually. I've been married for a long time. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's the other one. Yeah.
How long have you been married?
For 22 years. Almost 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So a while.
Yeah. And how long have you been racing cars?
Well, I took a break. I started seriously in 2003 and started doing autocross, which is just racing in parking lots, and then graduated to racetracks in like 2005, and then did it pretty consistently up until 2009 when the first kid was born, and then took like a really big break and got back into it during the pandemic. It was a great pandemic activity because we weren't really...
You're in your car.
Yeah, you're an individual in your car. It was like the perfect thing. And then we were just wearing masks all the time outside talking to each other. So it turned out to be a really very like healing thing to do during the pandemic. Then got diagnosed with cancer, took another break because chemo and cars don't mix. And then started again in earnest in 2022. So.
And autocross, is that the one with the cones with the special track? And okay.
Yeah, like trying not to hit cones in a parking lot.
Try not to hit cones. Yeah. Try not to hit stuff in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Check.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Is other cars okay? No? Okay.
No, right. Don't hit the other cars.
Yeah. So what I know, like, this show has the title of UX in it, but screw that. What kind of car do you drive and where do you race it?
Currently, I'm driving it's a Porsche 911, and I've been racing it mostly at Portland International Raceway in Portland. That's like my home track. And then I've also done a couple of track days in LA, not in my car, in a different car. But 2025, I would love to go to some other racetracks. There's a great one called Thunderhill that's in Northern California, about 7 hours from where I am, which is kind of doable. And then the Ridge, which is up in Washington. So those are kind of my plans.
That's cool.
We'll see what I can make happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are these ones that you compete, or is it just you show up and you're able to race on those tracks?
I do the ones where you show up and you're racing against yourself, because you can still insure yourself for that kind of racing.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas when you're competitively racing, it's all up to chance. And right. I'm not quite in that echelon of racing or finances.
No, I
So you're racing against yourself. Of course, there's a little friendly competition between people who have similar cars and whatnot. But really, you're kind of trying to improve against your own skills.
So when the light goes or the flag goes, whatever, you're the only one on doing the lap at
Oh
that
no,
time.
yeah, there's usually about 25 other cars on track with you.
Oh,
Just
really?
that
Okay.
you're not starting together in a grid, and so there's more opportunity for you guys to kind of be spaced out, but you end up being wheel to wheel with people and passing people
Oh, I see.
as
Okay.
as the session goes on, because some people are faster than other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So still some
Oh.
danger.
Yeah.
You know,
Good.
enough
Excellent.
danger for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something I've always wanted to take my car out on the track, but it's just never something that I've done before.
Oh, I mean, you can take any car out there. Like, they all show up.
Well, good.
Yeah, I mean, you could. There's Subaru wagons out there. There's like, I saw like an old like Cutlass, like Oldsmobile Cutlass once
Oh,
that
really?
somebody just showed up with, all the way to supercars and stuff like that. So yeah, there's all kinds of. It's an all comers kind of thing. The
Yeah.
tagline,
My
like drive anything, drive everything, is like the car group that I belong to's tagline, which I think is great.
Yeah. My car would be classified as a sporty car, not a
Mm-hmm.
sport car. And I've never really, for legal reasons or purposes, I've never really pushed it before.
Yeah.
And for anecdotal reasons, I absolutely have. But not really, really. And I've always thought it would be fun to see what it can actually do.
Yeah. And the track is
So,
like the perfect place to kind of illuminate what the limitations are. Cause like,
mhm.
if you can go fast on a freeway on ramp or whatever, it's a straight line. But the corners on a track is where you really start to see things become a little unhinged and just kind of like, what is happening and how do I control it? And how much do I want to let it slip is kind of a
Mhm.
good one, because some people are like all about it and other people are trying to rein it in. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much all your tires, honestly. It comes down to tires.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't use the current tire because I have the winter tires on right now. I don't think
Yeah.
I.
That would be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's not do that.
No. Have you ever
But I
seen
do.
that Instagram account, the Gubby 500?
Mm-mm.
It's a joke of the Indy 500 race, and it's called the Gubby 500 in reference to government camp, like who can get to government camp fastest. But it's basically this account that chronicles people send in all of the, how would you describe them? Unprepared cars that try to make it up to government camp, and it is pretty hilarious. Like, it's just, you'll have to check it out. But
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
some people need winter tires, basically, is the
Yeah.
the punchline.
There's been this sort of theme of like the people I've talked to so far where like a lot of them were and are musicians, and some of them are very interested in more adventurous things. Not that being a musician can't be adventurous, especially if you're a touring musician, but it's always curious to me, like the lives of UX people, and
Yeah.
like what are some of the things that run parallel to their UX life, and how is it different, and how does it sort of, in what ways might it inform what they do professionally? So I'm curious, like for you, like how did you get started? I know, given how I know how long you've been doing UX stuff, racing wasn't an introduction to that, but
Yeah. Get started in UX or get started?
in UX.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's a convoluted story for anybody, I think, who is of my age group, right? Because UX wasn't necessarily like a thing that had a name.
Right. Yeah.
Human computer interaction was its name. But the reason I got into it was I was in graduate school for design, and we had this very like the reason I chose that school, which was California College of Arts. I chose it because they had like a design program that was you you define what your thesis project is going to be and the subject of it and the medium. So you could have a thesis project in furniture design or physical product design or graphic design or any mutation of design. I thought that was really interesting and cool. I didn't know what I wanted to do for my thesis project. But I met one of the original founders of IDEO's design research practice. She was one of our professors. Her name is Zara Logue. And I didn't know prior to that point in grad school that some people dedicated their careers to understanding human behavior and its applications to design. Like I was very much coming to school with kind of the lens of like, I'm a designy person and I have lots of ideas, etc. So anyway, she was my introduction to design research as a practice. And again, like nobody was talking about UX really. But I was just like, oh, I want to do that. Like that is definitely what's really interesting to me. So after school, I was mainly working for like the brand side of things, like understanding people and what they thought of things and how that applied to like brand expression. But then there was this one really pivotal project that I got put on through an agency in Portland for Adidas that was like the combination of the physical in person and the digital on the phone experience. And how people were like shopping cross-platform and how those two worlds could kind of come together. And that was like 2010 or something like that. And that's when I was like, oh, the application of all this design research stuff that I've been doing to the digital realm is pretty fascinating. I'll kind of go that angle for a while. And then ended up working for a consultancy that only did UX research called Answer Lab, which was based in San Francisco, and worked with just like all the big techie companies as a consultant. And that was kind of like my graduate degree in a way, you know, like just working with all those different lenses of how they were applying UX research and what the outputs were. And so that's what I kind of consider like my formal like transition to UX was like 2013 was really when I was like, oh, I am a UX researcher. This is what I do. And then it's just kind of continued and mutated over the last 10 years, almost 12 years. Dang.
Yeah.
But I've been out of school for almost 20 years, so it took a while.
Yeah. You come to it when you come to it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that that original project would fall into the realm of like today maybe even back then we'd call it this, but like service design, you know?
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you know, because you've had that experience, because of some of the other experiences I know you had, where you see the, this is turning out to be a biased question, but let's try and work around it, Matthew. Where you see your skills, capabilities of being a design researcher and how that can shift regardless of what the sort of the material is, whether it's a digital product or a service and like, how do you look at that? Do you see a difference? Close question.
Yeah. I tend to have like a problem with like sticking with one thing for too long. Whatever
you are welcome in this space.
And so I have really enjoyed like moving industries and moving between what the application of my research is in terms of like, am I working on something that is a in-person solution, or am I working on something that's like an app, or am I working on something that blends both of those two together? So I think the like one constant that stays true is like I'm always interested in people and trying to figure out what they're doing and why, which is the perennial, never-ending source of inspiration and fun. And it's less about like how that gets applied. Like I wouldn't ever say like, oh, I could only ever work on apps, or I could only ever work on digital products. Like if somebody came to me today and was like, oh, redesign the experience for how somebody buys a Porsche, I would be like, sweet, like that's a blend of all those different things together. There's like a digital shopping, and there's the in-person element, and like the tangible feeling element. And even though I'm not an expert in all of those different experience verticals, like I am super interested in understanding enough about them so that I can think about things holistically, which is, I think, what we would call service design. But the part of service design I think that my brain doesn't work as well with is like the very kind of like detailing out into like a service map or something of like every single permutation of what's going to happen. Like that is not my forte. My forte is like understand what people are trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, the things that appeal to them along there, and thinking about how design supports them or reacts to them or whatever. And not so much the like go to market part of it. Right. Or another one would be like, this is why I haven't gotten into healthcare, is like, I would be very interested in working on something that's that blend of in-person, someone going through a health journey kind of thing. But I'm not as interested in detailing out all the different like permutations. It's more about understanding people's like drive, motivation, behavior, that kind of thing. I don't know if that quite answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, there's no wrong answer, Yeah. You're the expert in your lived experience, so there's no wrong answer. Yeah, the bias inherent in that the system of that question was like for a long time. I feel like there's been this, I'm a service designer, you're a product designer.
Yeah,
you stay over there, I'll stay over here. And I feel like I keep saying like there's more that we share collectively than separates us. And mostly what separates us are some deliverables and when we engage in the life cycle of a project.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's shifting a little bit. But I also have a similar experience to you, is that like I've worked across all these different industries, and for the most part, I don't think it's too reductive to say it really is just people trying to get stuff done, or trying to learn something, or trying to go somewhere. And that level of abstraction, like it can be applied to anything. And then you get into the details of it. And I've definitely run into situations where I'm like, I don't understand what this person's talking about, but I have a subject matter expert to help me contextualize it. But the other lens that I've been hearing for so long is like, no, you've got to have 15 years of experience in fintech to be able to get a fintech project. Yeah. It's like, why?
Fintech hasn't even been around that long.
Right. Yeah. You mean banks? Banks are different.
Moving money? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean people trying to pay their bills? Are we there? Okay. Yeah. That's the same as this thing over here.
Yeah.
They're not different. Yeah. It's just it's this weird, like a I wanted to say dichotomy, but there's more. So it's like a quadcotomy.
Economy.
Yeah, that's not real.
We just
Patent
made it
pending.
up.
We just made it. We're going to be rich. But where it's like within the profession, there's not a lot of agreement on that.
Yeah.
Outside of the profession, there's not a lot of agreement on it. And I think it just, I know there are lots of things that we need to address, certainly within the profession, very clearly, specifically not pluralizing that. But yeah, it's just, so I was just curious about your perspective on it and how you thought about it.
Yeah, like the specialization versus generalization. Yeah, I mean, I think that people, so I guess there's like multiple lenses that we're trying to deal with at the same time. And one of those is that like people who are running companies or making decisions are generally still thinking of design as the folks that are just going to come and sort of like clean the thing up and make it presentable and whatnot. And it's kind of crazy that that's still the perception. Definitely there's, amazing examples of design-led companies out there that approach things differently, fundamentally differently, and they value design much more. But I think to a lot of companies, it's like they emulate those design-led companies, but they're only thinking about the like visual expression of the thing or like the experience of the thing. And so it's weird to me that like our job category itself is sort of taking on some of that, we all need to have like a certain level of professionalism and like experience and whatnot. But I think over focusing on really limited verticals, like you're sort of locking yourself down if, you have 15 years of fintech experience as a design director or something, means that you haven't really seen a lot of other parts of the world, the UX world, and are able to bring them in. So I tend to feel like having a wider range of experience is more of a benefit. And I feel like that's the kind of like curious part of UX that's disappearing with the professionalization like push. And I think about like folks that I worked with 10 years ago and what their educational backgrounds were versus like new people coming out of school and what their educational backgrounds are like. And I don't necessarily mean like the level of education. I just mean like somebody comes from ethnomusicology or something, but they're like a hyper curious person and they're deeply invested in learning about people and they're a fabulous UX researcher. Versus somebody who came out of a program that's focused on the UX process and it's more about like checking boxes of like, well, we did our discovery and we did our brainstorming and then we did our iterations, we converged and we diverged and we did double diamond and check the boxes. I think like that genuine curiosity piece has a big role to play, and it's a reason why some people end up kind of being more generalists or what have you, or crossing different industries. And like they still have tremendous knowledge and applicable experience versus someone who comes out of a UX program and goes into a certain vertical and then stays in that vertical forever. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I have like the Gen X view, which is like, I think it's probably better.
Which is the correct view.
Liberal arts educations.
Yeah.
Learning how to think critically and then applying that to our work as opposed to getting essentially like some form of a business degree and going into business.
Yeah. I very distinctly remember one of my professors saying, our job isn't to help you get a job. Our job is to help you think critically so that you can go do it on your own. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. And I think they were absolutely right. And that's actually something that one of my alma maters like really struggles with is like the art program is very much Like, we are an art program. Like, we are here to help you think creatively and think critically. Like, we're not going to help you get a job in advertising. Like, we probably won't be able to do that. But if you
Right.
are, you have like intrinsic talent and you're able to learn how to focus that in different ways, like, probably going to turn out fine anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll generate your own opportunities because of what you're capable of doing.
Well, and because you're truly interested in it.
Yeah.
You're not just like, oh, I'm going to get this degree and go get a job in this field. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine was like, because the lens on my liberal arts degree was writing. And so I went and got a job as a tech writer. And, I spent a while writing help and manuals for poorly designed products.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I wouldn't have to work so hard if the stuff was just designed better.
Mm-hmm.
And I said this out loud, and someone said, well, we've got an opening in the design group. And so I was like, okay.
Uh-huh.
And so now I'm the one who's designing things terribly. I mean, looking back on my first couple of tries at things, yeah, sure. That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's been such and like most of the people I've talked to, like the entirely circuitous route they've taken to get where they are versus, and honestly, there isn't anything wrong with this other way of like, I went to school for this, I went to Georgia Tech or Carnegie Mellon and got an HCI degree, or I went to boot camps, and this is how I got into it. But I think that, to sort of build off of what you're saying, like the mark of, did I say demarcation? Nope. Delineation. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
I got marks stuck in my head. Is that I'm here to deliver on a method that I've been taught versus I'm here to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And whatever methods best serve my goals in doing that are what I'll use. And it feels like there's an aspect of this profession that's been highly commoditized. And I'm not just talking about things like user testing, which is highly commoditized usability testing. But, and I know I've said this before, but like kind of going back to a discussion I had with a product design director one time, he sat down and he said, first question, didn't even say hi. He said, so what are your favorite design tools? And I just looked at him like a pencil and paper. And he said, no, like tools. I'm like, yeah, I know where this conversation is going. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very much focused on how can I productize your attention and time in your profession to deliver these specific deliverables so that we can feed this machine and generate engineering tickets, and because that's what our metrics are. Sorry, this has tangented a little bit.
No, I mean,
but
yeah. No, I know. I'm picking up on what you're laying down. Like, and I think that there's, as much as the methods and whatnot have been productized, like there's still like hundreds of people out there using these things in terrible ways, and, ways that aren't really getting to the true answer or the true motivations that people have, because it makes it easier to just be like, we did user testing, check, because we ran it through unmoderated testing, or whatever, synthetic users now, and got some feedback on it. And sometimes that's all well and good, and like that's what the stage of design deserves or whatever. Like, it needs to be just usability tested or something. But the tools have changed quite a bit since I started working in UX. And I think that that's the part, it's like you need to learn to use some tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting
Yeah.
started and when you're in school and everything. But it will continue to change over and over and over during your career. And so I think if you don't fundamentally learn some of that, like grit and determination of like, I'm going to figure out how to get this done, even though I don't have the perfect tool, it lends itself to problems later when it's like, well, now nobody uses Figma anymore. We're all using this new thing that just came out. And it's like you have to adapt and learn the new tools. So yeah, I think that was your story with the design director. It's like,
yeah,
my favorite design tool probably is pen and paper, because like it's about solving the problem in an abstract way as opposed to diving right into Figma and producing the thing.
Leaning on the design system and just building out components that may solve the problem, but maybe an interface in an app isn't what's going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings us back to the research part of things and finding out like what's actually going on. So like a few minutes ago, you were talking about how less so for you, the enjoyment of the detailed of, creating the maps and stuff like that. Or I don't want to misrepresent what you said, so correct me if I'm wrong. But does that mean that you tend to be more generative in the kind of work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think like in my current role, it kind of lends itself to the more like foundational research and thinking about like what are defining the core jobs to be done or the problems that we're trying to solve, and then how people, and like really being true to representing how people are achieving those things today, because I think that's one part of what gets lost in the product discovery process, right? It's like, oh, we know the problem, now we have this thing and we're going to give it to them, and like, it's like, no, they already have a free solution that does it for them and they're perfectly happy with it. But it tends to be a lot of foundational work, generative. And I think what I've learned is because my weakness is like the super detailed, like if somebody told me today, like, I want you to build a service map of like everything that happens on, I don't know, Amazon in the app, I would be like, I'm going to go bury myself I'm going to bury my head in the ground and like, la, 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 because that's like that would be my worst assignment. And so I think like figuring out who you can partner with, who really enjoys that kind of thing. And in my current role, at least, there's a whole function of folks that are like program managers. I love a program manager. Oh my gosh. They just want to like make a massive Google sheet and, and so I think it's been a little bit about identifying where my weaknesses are and then figuring out who actually enjoys that kind of work and would want to partner, and then convincing that person to partner. But it tends to be still, honestly, a lot of like shadowing and being in person with people that we're trying to build for, and the value of that is like not lost on the teams that I work with, and people are generally willing to invest the time to do it. And I think it still tends to be transformational for people, like when they go and like follow somebody around for a day or 2 days and actually see what they're doing. It's so much stuff that we just make assumptions about and compartmentalize when we're just on our computers. So there's still a lot of value into getting people just with users and out into the field. So I do quite a bit of that type of research still, and I won't call it ethnography because it's not, but shadowing users. We do that.
Just to put it out there, most people in this profession do not do ethnography.
Yeah.
They do contextual inquiry, and that's the hill I'll die on. You said weakness of that detailed stuff, but I would also throw out there that maybe this is just my own rationalization. But I feel like with a lot of those really detailed deliverables that tend to fall in our purview, as it were, they tend to be extraordinarily ephemeral and often in the end not helpful.
Yeah.
When I think about service blueprints and things like that, I feel like unless the organization is set up in such a way that to treat a service blueprint like they treat their design system, which is something that has to be continuously updated and there's governance things around it, there's, do I mean this? I mean this a little bit, but I'm going to say it for effect. There's almost no point in creating it in the first place if you don't have those systems in place to maintain it, because at some point your future blueprint becomes your current blueprint, and then you've got to manage that.
Yeah.
So it's, if in the current context of what you're working on, if again using the tools that make sense to move things forward, maybe some of that stuff isn't even needed in the first place. I mean, it's also good that you have people to partner with, but I wouldn't necessarily, I'm being your cheerleader here at the moment. I think both you and I would call it a weakness just because we're being a little self-deprecating a bit, but it's also a recognition of what's truly necessary to move this work forward, and to help people make decisions, because that's, in the end, that's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting take around the governance part and who's going to be on point to keep it updated. Because it is true that I feel like sometimes we are reinventing the wheel a little bit, because if not everybody was involved in the creation of that first thing, then there's a need that appears that's like, well, we need to understand all the pieces and components, and then that particular makeup group creates an artifact that then becomes the truth for them, and everybody who is involved in the creation of that one references that one, as opposed to maybe like a pre-existing one that was updated. That one kind of gets left behind, and I definitely think that there's not a lot of precedent right now in organizations for who owns, controls, updates, those kind of massive inventories. It's funny too, because I just ran a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and I partnered with a designer because one of the asks was like, understand the end-to-end workflow. And we were like, well, how much detail do we actually need? And so we ended up making a fairly simplified version, because the original ask was like, all the systems that people are using in this thing and all the jobs to be done, what are the individual tasks, what are the steps along the way, all these things. And we were like, what if we just use the jobs to be done as the spine, and put in those main steps, and then just genericized what people are the different things people are using to accomplish. And it is fascinating how that has been shared and reused, because it's easy enough for people to grok in a single look. You can look at the thing and be like, oh, you're doing this activity, you're using these types of tools. It's thin enough that people can understand it and start to engage with it, versus the previous map that was very many columns and very many rows, and people just couldn't get into it unless we were in person and we could have a huge group of it. Yeah.
They require a concierge essentially to walk them through and explain it. And even though you could read it, it's still, you get to that level of detail and it can be very easy to get lost in it.
Yeah. And I do think that often service designers, part of their job and everything is to be the concierge and the person who kind of walks you through. But I think as a reusable artifact, sometimes something that just takes the top level can be more approachable to people.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if it's you're working with people who don't necessarily need to understand all aspects of a system.
Yeah.
They just need to understand like where are the pain points, where's things breaking down, and okay, maybe we can go into detail about those things.
Yeah, or like the asterisk, like it's complicated. Like
yeah, right.
this stage, and this stage,
Yeah.
like there's a whole bunch of engineering complexity, and we just don't mess with those right now. Maybe there's other places we go to first. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a box that says you don't want to know.
That would be hilarious, actually. Like, you don't even want to know what's happening here. But no, we do want to know, and we want to know the details and everything. But yeah, it's just interesting to see what artifacts you make that do go kind of viral versus ones where it's like, damn, I spent a lot of work on that, and like nobody's ever looked at it again.
Yeah.
Like maybe that should be a lesson to not do that again.
Yeah, it absolutely is a lesson. Not do that again. And if it bites you later, you can always do the extra work to build it out somewhere.
Create another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to ask you my 7 plus or minus 2 questions.
Okay, cool. I'm excited for these. These are like the Vanity Fair.
That's right. Yeah. Except somewhat contextualized for UX because I'm stealing Miller's 7 plus or minus 2 thing because it makes me laugh. All right. So what's one thing that you would change about your profession?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I did say one thing. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm like. Let me just take a minute. Okay. One thing I would change about the profession of UX research, I guess, specifically. Gosh, I don't know. The thing that's coming, I'll just tell you the thing that's coming to mind, even though I'm like, I don't know how you would do that. I just, the value of UX research is, it can be so difficult to attribute decisions that the business made or decisions that product made based on research that you did, because good research tends to become just part of our language and stuff, and then all of a sudden all these people are kind of like repeating the same thing because they now have shared knowledge. So I guess one thing I would change is like attribution or credit back to UX research for informing really big business decisions. I don't know. I'm not going to be fast at these. I better hurry up.
No, there's no. I mean, that's what editing's for, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one. It's and I suspect, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it is not solely for the ability to be aggrandized by the organization, but
no,
but to be able to help people understand you, not in a mean way, but like you wouldn't have got there without this work. So take it more important or take it more seriously, and
because
also give me a raise.
The elapsed time is sometimes so long.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult. I've been working on this actually, trying to go back to a particular product and be like, the reason why we did this is because 6 months before we saw this when we were doing shadowing. And it's tough to go back. I'm not good at connecting those things even for myself. So
yeah. And finding the time to do it as well. Yeah, because it's on to the next thing.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, so next question, what do you wish people cared more about
in the world?
Sure. Whatever comes to mind.
Gosh. God, these questions are really hard. I wish people cared more about just seeing humans as humans and not trying to like I think it's really easy right now to kind of extract yourself from situations and just be like, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it that way. That person's doing that thing wrong. Instead of thinking about what actually it might be like to be the person in that situation making that decision. Yeah, that's what I think I'll go with. Humans as humans.
Mm-hmm. Well, in that vein, I have started. I do okay at it, but when someone does something objectively, not subjectively, but objectively dumb, when I'm driving, I think, have I ever done that?
Yeah.
So far, I haven't come up with, most of it's not overly extreme, but so far I haven't come up with no, I haven't done that. They are objectively dumb.
Yeah.
It's always been, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. And you have to like, it takes a lot of like mental jumping around to get yourself to admit that, honestly, especially in the moment. I write everything down that people do that offends me while driving because I'm a driving person. I write it down. A, it helps me forget that it ever happened. But B, sometimes when I go back and look at it, I'm like, yeah, I've probably done that to somebody else.
Yeah, I also keep track of license plates.
Yeah.
And the tally of Washington plate versus Oregon plate.
Oh no. That's a Portland one. Yeah. We have California plates. Yeah. Down here.
All right. So next question. What is the best meal you've ever had?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just going to go with my off the cuff, like multiple choice guessing, like you're always right. You're technically more right than wrong when you just go for the one that you think it is. I think the best meal I've ever had, my mom makes chicken and biscuits. It's like chicken with gravy.
I'll be right there.
And biscuits. And it's really my favorite food, like on this earth. I've eaten like lots of fancy places and lots of countries and stuff, but like that's my favorite meal. Yeah, chicken and biscuits.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
How's the chicken prepared?
The chicken is just roasted chicken.
Yeah.
That's in a gravy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's like when the whole thing's been made end to end, and the biscuits are homemade, and yeah. I cheat and make like a like Pillsbury biscuit version for my family, which I feel a little embarrassed about because biscuits aren't hard to make, and it's okay. But when my mom makes the whole thing, it's just like, dang, yeah. So I know how to make it. I just don't often take the time.
Yeah. I get that. I get that. All right. Next question. What do you wish you'd done differently?
In my whole life, I'll just give you top of the head one. Top of the head one is I wish I had bought fewer cars and wasted less money on cars. It has been a serious problem throughout my entire life, and I have probably wasted like a house on stupid cars. But you know what? It's been fun. So that's what I've done. That's something I would change about my life.
Mm-hmm. What's the stupidest car or purchase or whatever?
I mean, just all of them in
just all
cumulative.
Of them.
I mean, I've probably owned 35 cars, and I've been driving for 30 years. So that math isn't right.
Is it like turning the paperclip into a house thing that now you're in a Porsche and you started in a Pinto or something? Or like, do you know what I mean? The paperclip in the house thing?
What is that?
It may be I know it happened, but my telling of it may be somewhat apocryphal, but a guy said, I've got a paperclip and he's going to try and trade it for a house. So how many trades does it take?
Oh,
So I'll trade you this paperclip for something that I can then trade somebody for
I get
something and trade my way to a house.
Yeah, no, see, cars don't work like that. You lose
No,
money every
yeah,
time you sell one,
yeah.
pretty much. And the thing that ruined me was like the couple of times where I made money.
Oh,
And then I was like, we could definitely do this again. And then it would just be like, no. So, yeah, in some ways, I wish I had never gotten like the car addiction because it truly
mm-hmm.
is, I think, for some people. Um, but, I will take it over. I don't drink alcohol, don't smoke, don't use drugs. So, cars, driving is my,
Cars.
yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
All right. Yeah. So next question: what would you do for a living if you left what you were doing now?
If I really could do anything,
Mm-hmm.
I would have like a I just pitched this to my daughter the other day. I love like scent has been a focus area for me for a long time. Like I was very interested in like wine and winemaking and whiskey and stuff when I did drink alcohol, which I don't anymore, but translatable sort of activities to um, not necessarily perfumes, but like how
Mm-hmm.
spaces smell. I did a project on this once in school, and it was just like really fascinating how smell is connected to memories and all of these different things. So I think I would probably have some kind of offering, whether it was a store or online or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
um, where people could create their own, scents, like have very beautiful design, of course, of all the packaging and experience and everything, but some kind of like housewares slash scents slash just surrounding my stuff with really like myself with really beautiful stuff. That's what I would
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question: imagine it's a year from now. What do you hope to not be carrying anymore?
Oh, you can't ask me that on the eve of like 2025. I feel like what do I hope to not be carrying anymore? Boy. I mean, every year I try to get rid of more self doubt, which I feel like is somewhat easier as you get older. It sort of naturally falls out a little bit, but I think it's like it's the evil monster that always like creeps back, like, am I really good at this?
Yeah.
Do I actually know what I'm doing? Um, so yeah, I would love to offload a bunch of self doubt.
Wonderful.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Dump it like a suitcase into the river over the bridge. What's in that suitcase? Nothing.
Nothing. It's just my self doubt. Yeah, that's you said like you get older, it gets easier, and I don't like for me. I don't know if it is getting easier. I think it's getting easier for some things, but yeah, I think that's a good one.
Yeah, it's that's what I was saying. It's like the one that keeps sort of like clawing its way back
Mm-hmm.
because I do think that you reach a stage in your, it's not just career wise either. It's like just life, having kids or whatever. Like it introduces all this self doubt that you're just like, I totally don't know what I'm doing and this is not right.
Yeah.
So there's many levels. Um, but yeah, then you reach this other turning point where you're like, I'm now like older than 90% of the people that I work with. And like, that's a whole new, different kind of self doubt where you're just kind of like, okay, this introduces even more questions. So I don't feel like it's been a linear path of like, oh, as I get older, I just care less about what people think and, that sort of thing. It is like a very messy subject.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's an aspect of it that is related to humility,
Mm-hmm.
but like true humility, just not the lack of bragging about yourself, but really understanding as objectively as possible what your capabilities are and how good you are at something, and being comfortable with that. But there's another aspect of it that just feels like it's not in service of anything,
Mm-hmm.
and it just is like, really still, and it's just,
Yeah,
it's rough, man.
it is. So get that old suitcase out, and metaphorically, we can pass it over them. I have a really good bridge out here. It's the I-5 bridge over the Willamette River. No, I would never dump anything into a river, but metaphorically, never. I would. So there.
Right.
Yes.
Although, and hear me out, we could start a company that sells suitcases specifically.
So it's an invisible suitcase.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You fill it with your worries, and then we dump it into the Willamette River for you, and no one will notice because
suitcase as a service.
Suitcase
there we go.
Service. Yeah. It'll be good.
Perfect. All right. That's all the questions.
That was fun. Those are some good questions. Those are some good, end of the year questions.
I'm glad I could help.
Yeah. Thanks.
Although if we had done this in September, I probably would have asked similar questions. So,
no, but I'm just saying, now that I'm at the end of the year, I'm just like, yeah, what do I not want to do in 2025? It's a good prompt.
Yeah, that is actually a good prompt to be very specific about. What do I want to stop doing next year?
Yeah.
And what am I going to do to ensure that I stop doing it?
Yeah.
Maybe put together some sort of blueprint that could help me. No.
I don't know. We'd have to have a lot of columns and a lot
of columns. Yeah. A lot of boxes. Yeah. Okay, maybe we won't do that. Yeah. All right, well, let's stop talking.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. That was fun.